Hi everyone, we've got a nice wildflower woodland scene to do today. So what I've done is I've taped off and made the paper a little bit squarer so I can follow the line of the hill line. Then I've popped in the mountain line in the background and a few tree trunks. I've then popped in with masking fluid these purple flowers, dabbing. So you want it to be random, you don't want it to be too uniform, and you want them to be fairly big at the front. So I'm going to let that dry. Colours wise, I've got intense blue, raw sienna, sepia. Sepia is fairly thick. I've got cadmium red deep or Windsor red. You want a bright red, and you want that neat out the tube. I've got permanent rose and cobalt blue mixed together to make a purple. And then I've got a green made with gamboge and intense blue. So a nice selection there of colours. What I'm going to do first of all is pop a little bit of a background sky in. So I'm going to come down to this mountain line. Just wet the sky. It's nice and easy today. I'm just going to sweep in a very light bit of intense blue. And that is pretty much it. I'll dry that off. Scoop them. Okay, so that's dry. I'm now going to come into this distant mountain. So the water's along the top, and I'm going to come in just create this nice edge that we can see in the very distance. Now I'm very aware that we can't see it in the middle, but we don't need to worry about that at this stage. I'm going to take a little bit of raw sienna in towards the bottom. In fact, you can bring that raw sienna where this middle bit is right the way up, so you start to blend that line out. So I'm just going to bring it along this edge here just to blend that line out a little bit there. My brush is loaded with water, and I'm just going to bring in a little bit of sepia. I want you to aim in between those tree trunks. Now you don't have to do that all the way along, but those bigger tree trunks, I just want to try and preserve a little bit of light. If it blends too much, I'll show you what to do in a second because mine has flown quite a lot. So I'm just going to, with a dry brush, clean dry brush, just lift a little bit out there and there. Doesn't matter if it comes over a little bit. I'm just trying to get a little bit of this darkness in that's in the background. And then I'm going to do the same with a little bit of the green. Just start to bring that in, just so we're getting a nice base. Either side of those bigger tree trunks. And again, dry my brush off, just just lift a little bit out. I don't want to lose the light totally on those. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, because whilst that's the masking fluid's drying, I'm going to start to come on and create these tree trunks. There's a fair few of them. So I can start on this side. So jaggedy bottom, this is going on with sepia first, raw sienna first, then sepia. So I'm using my round number 10 to put the raw sienna on, and then my round number 6 to come in with a sepia. You want to make sure that one side's nice and dark. Whilst it's still wet, it'll flow through, and you want to make sure you've got a jaggedy bottom. Come along to this one. If you don't want them to be quite as warm, you can make the sepia, raw sienna, I can't get my words out today, a lot lighter. You could add a bit of blue to the sepia if you want them to be more grey as well. Okay, so I'm still coming along with these trees. For the thinner ones, you just need to come on with sepia. And if you vary the pressure of the brush, you can do that quite nicely. You can always add a bit of water if you want one a bit lighter next to it. So just dip my brush into water, vary the pressure of the brush. This is just all number 6. And then if you want some thinner ones, thinner branches, you can come down to a line writer and pop a few of those in. Remember, you're going for an impression of it, doesn't have to be exact. A few darker ones. It's strange because they're all going in exactly the same way. They must be growing towards the light because they're on a hill. But I've never seen anything quite like it, or I've never observed it. So it's an interesting one, really. We're going to put some foliage on after. Occasionally I might take one going the opposite way, just because I think it looks strange without. And I've got a nice little tree here. And I've got a huge amount of trees here, but we're just going to give an impression of. I'm going to come in and just create on these two here some light. So I want these ones to dry and have a harder edge. So I can see a lot of light on these ones, and I'm also going to do that on this one here. So the ones we've basically lifted out. Don't get too bogged down with how many trees you've got. Just pop a few in here. Very easy to get lost with the number of trees. It's not the focal point of the picture. There just need to be a few trees in there. So I'm just popping in a few tree trunks, just make sure they come down to this edge. A few might come a bit further. And you can do a few branches off these ones. Remember, they don't necessarily have to go up as high because you've got foliage coming in here. I'm going to pick some sepia up. Hopefully these are dry enough now. And I'm just going to run down one side, leaving a little bit of light, similar to how I've done that one. I want that glow of light. So I should have a nice glow of light on each of those now. And then I'm going to run off a few branches. Again, some of this will have foliage over, so don't worry too much. Try and make these front ones a bit darker. They'll hold together better in the picture. Take a couple off this one. Looks a bit random here. Okay, I'm going to dry that off. Okay, so we're now going to do a little bit of sponging just on this foliage at the top. I'm just using my natural sponge. I've wrung it out really well and then I'm dabbed into the paint. I'm just going to come on, just create a little bit of an effect. So it's going to give a denser feel. These trees on the right hand side, I'm just going to try and avoid that light that I wanted to keep. I'm going to say easier said than done, but you just want to try and keep that a little bit. So you can dab down in between. You could actually do a bit of stippling if you wanted with a stippling brush. Just going to get a little bit of Gambo's yellow because it's a little on the green side, just to break into that. So I've done that fairly thick. So you've got that nice summer yellow coming through in places. If I get a stippling brush, there we go, and a little bit of sepia, I can just break into this a little bit. So it just needs to be a bit darker down this bottom section. The sponge is a bit too random. I need to be a bit more precise just to build this up. So it's giving that darker effect further in, so it needs to be fairly dark, especially where you're coming up against this tree. And this one here. So it's just creating that light and dark effect, so you're getting that standing out. Just keep dabbing into the water if your brush goes a bit dry. The darker you can get this bit, the more that will stand out. That's working really well now. Do a little bit more up here. And it's also going to make this hill at the front stand out much better. And break that line up a bit. You could take a bit more green in if you wanted. I'm happy with that. I'm going to dry that off and come on to the front. Okay, so we're ready for this bottom section now. I've popped water on, and then the first thing I'm going to do is drop some Gambo's yellow, which I've got left on my palette from the last section, along this top bit here. If you didn't want it to be quite as bright, you could use a little bit of raw sienna, but I quite like the vibrancy. I'm never one to shy away from colour. And then into the green mix, which is Intense Blue and Gamboge. You can see by how much it's flowing how much water I've actually put on here. I've not been shy with the water at all. I want it to stay wet, I want it to be fluid. I don't want to be rushing. Following the direction of the hill. The balance is to get the green not too strong, and then when you come in with the red, it's going to be still quite vibrant. There's things to do though if that doesn't work, so don't panic if you think, oh, it's not worked. Okay, so whilst I've still got a bit of green on my brush, I'm going to dip in to a little bit of the Intense Blue and just start to create a little bit of texture. This is mainly around this bottom third. And I want you to be quite fluid and loose. Just swirl it around so you're having lots of fun. I've got a little bit of that purple that we're going to use later on the flowers, so I'm just going to dab some of that in towards the front as well. And then a tiny touch of the sepia. So if you look where the darker areas are and just pop a few shapes in, it will work really nicely. If you didn't like the sepia, you could use a tiny bit of indigo, but the sepia works quite nicely. We've used it already in the picture. And then I'm going to load my brush up with the red, and I want you to come in and dab. So to start with, you're going to do big dabs with these bigger areas, and then you're going to come in towards the background and do littler dabs. If you want to do littler dabs with a littler brush, that works just as well. You could splatter, you could flick, either way, but I'm just gonna dab today. The trick is to move quickly, not think about it, so therefore it is random. Somebody will still manage to do it non-random, but that's what you're aiming for. Random, random, random. There's quite a lot of red in here. Because we're going on neat and it's still damp, it should soften. You actually don't want them to be too focused. So littler ones towards the back, bigger ones towards the front. The bigger ones, as they settle, you can come in with a bit more paint. You can come on nice and strong and it will still hold it. So this is really thick. I've just got neat, it's just neat on the brush, and I'm coming in and creating as many of these as I want. Okay, with your sponge you should still have a little bit of the green on. I just want you to dab through some of the damper areas, but try not to hit too much of the red, because otherwise you'll make a brown mess. But if you just do a little bit, it'll hold together better as foliage. This is when lots of other mediums could be added if you wanted to as well. Okay, I'm going to dry that off now. Okay, so we have a little bit of an experiment here now. So in this corner, I'm going to start applying, so it's nice and dry. I'm going to start applying lots of green. So it's that same mix of green. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it, so I want it to run. You can see that I've already splattered some of it, and then I'm going to do this with a hairdryer. I'm going to say, what is she doing? Just because I want it to be really random. Squeeze it around to help yourself spread where you want it. So I've got a lovely random effect here. I think some of you will think I've gone mad. And I'm just going to pull out and through where these plants are. And we've got a fly buzzing around. And I'm going to take a little bit of water in places just to soften some of this in. I don't want it all to be hard. So I'm just dabbing randomly. So that's giving a nice texture at the front. I've then got a little bit of the sepia. And I need to come through and create these stems for these flowers. So it's mainly these ones at the front. Okay, I'm going to dry that off and rub the masking fluid off. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is with the purple, I've rubbed the masking fluid off and I'm just going to pop in the flowers on to dry. Now if you can leave little bits of the white showing, it will work much better as light. And that's pretty much it when I've done this. So you're just going to dab all these out. There we go, so I've finished dabbing all those out and it looks lovely. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you next week. Bye.